And we are live. Welcome back, everyone, whether you are joining us live just now or whether you are rewatching it later on. It's time, if you can believe it, to talk about our top 10 books of Q3. I cannot believe that we've done Q1, we've done Q2. Even when I put this video together, I typed in Q2. I couldn't believe that we were at the end of Q3 already. No. And today, as in videos for Q1 and Q2, I am joined by Linda, Mum, but I can touch her. She's not across the Atlantic Ocean. It's very exciting. And normally I would be sat there in the sunshine in Denver and you would be sat here in the dark in Yorkshire. And now we're both just sat here in the dark. It's wonderful. Yeah. And yeah, I scheduled this for sort of a similar time to usual. And then I was like, no, actually, I'd quite like to go to bed. So today we are going to be talking about our top 10 books of Q3 of 2021. So books that were released in July, August, or September in 2021, with, as always, one honourable mention for something that we actually read together that wasn't released in Q3 of 2021. I believe this one was released in Q2 of 2011, but we'll be just mentioning that one because it's something that we listened to literally together. So we'll be mentioning that one. As always, these reviews will be spoiler free. This is in no particular order, and all of the books are, of course, linked in the description box below. And we do have some people watching, so that's very exciting. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. It's lovely to have people watching. Maybe by doing it half an hour earlier, going rogue, we've got more people watching.
It's possible.
Yes, yeah. It's always nice to actually have an active audience when we're doing this. So yes, we will alternate as we have always done. And yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else that I haven't covered. Normally I forget something and you remember.
Yeah. Well, I think if there's anything you've forgotten, we've both forgotten it this time.
Yeah.
But yes, spoiler free, no particular order.
And I think that all of these books have already been reviewed on my blog. And if you are not already aware, my blog is always linked in the description box below, along with all my other social media channels. And these ones, my ones, will have featured on either my TBR or my wrap up for the months of July, August, and September. I will say it was slightly harder for me to pick 5 this time just because I have read significantly less in Q3 than I read in Q2 than I read in Q1. So yeah.
Well, I think it's the other way around for me.
There you go.
I read much more in Q3.
Oh wow. Clearly having me here has given you the inspiration to read more.
It must have been, yes.
Yeah. Maybe you're zapping all my reading
something
mojo.
Like that.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we begin?
Let's do that.
As always, I'm going to let you go first because you are the guest on the channel.
True.
So let's kick it off with a slightly festive read. Who's excited for festive reads? And as we are talking through these, as always, please do let us know in comments what your favourite book of Q3 has been, whether you are watching this live or whether you are watching this afterwards. We always want to know, and I will come back and read these later. There we go.
Right. Well, my first book is The Village Inn of Secret Dreams. And this is actually the third in a series of 3 books about the village of Cranbridge, which is described as a English countryside village. It's not, as I'm aware, actually given any particular location in England. It's just an English village. And I've actually talked before about at least one of the parts of this series. So you may have heard all about it before, but it sounds a lovely little village. It's got a river running through the middle, which I think is there on the cover. And it is, unfortunately, has become rather run down, this village. It's been obviously very important at one time, but people have moved on and maybe coming and living there but working somewhere else. So, as I say, this is the third part, and this is talking about the village inn, which is called the Black Swan, or as it has become known to locals, the Mucky Duck, unfortunately, which gives an indication of what's happened to it. The owners have become rather disenchanted and they don't really care what it looks like. The food's pretty awful. Need we say more? So anyway, the owners have decided that time has come. They need to sell it. They're getting further and further into debt, so they need to sell it. Unfortunately for them, a local who, well, he was a local, he's been away overseas, he's come back to live with his family, and he's got quite drunk and decided that he's going to buy the inn from them, which is great for them, and unfortunately not so great for their niece who lives with them, and she can foresee that she's going to lose her home and her job once this guy decides to do up the inn and then sell it on. So we've got the situation where he's deciding to do it up and have a very fancy Michelin star restaurant, and he's finding that in fact his plans are maybe not working, but she's helping him out, and she also is becoming closer to him, and we hope that maybe there's a bit of romance in the air. As Catriona said, there's a bit of a festive feel, and we see what it's like in this village at Christmas and at the New Year. And as with the other parts of this series, this is a really heartwarming story, little village, lots of community spirit, and a bit of romance, bit of comedy, bit of everything.
We like heartwarming.
We do.
As you were describing it there, you made it sound like the sort of quintessential Christmas movie type of thing with we've got sort of warring factions, a sort of perhaps enemies to lovers trope.
Oh, possibly.
Maybe following that trope.
No spoilers.
No spoilers ever. No, but we know the signs of an enemies to lovers trope, don't we?
Yeah.
Do you have to have read the other books in the series to read this one?
Not at all. No. Although it would be nice to do so. I can recommend them all.
Yeah.
You
may have talked about one of these in one of our other wrap-ups, actually.
Yes. Yeah, I'm talked about at least one.
Yeah, you'll have to go back and watch Q2 and Q1 to find out which one's got the mention.
See what else in the village has had a makeover.
Yes, yeah. So my next book is probably the complete opposite of your book, because I have a psychological thriller here. I like to mix it up, go back and forth a little bit. I will be talking about some romance as well, but I do have a psychological thriller, and I have a physical copy of this one. So this is where I have to work with the screen mirroring to show you the physical copy. Let's go across. Yes,
very good. Well done.
This is The Heights by Louise Candlish. And as you can see, I did get myself, a signed copy from Imagine Things Books here in Harrogate. And this, oh my goodness, it just, this book, I just adore the fact that this cover is total Cadbury's chocolate colours. It's like the brown and the purple of Cadbury's chocolate. So this one is very hard to talk about without giving spoilers. And I know that Debbie, who is watching live right now, has read this too. And this one just blew me away. I picked it up and I just wanted to keep reading and reading and reading and reading. And I kept talking to you about it because I knew there was no chance you would read it. So I could talk about it with spoilers. But basically, the tagline on the front here is, "It's time to confess what you did up there." And then there's a sort of another tagline on the back here, and it says, "He thinks he's safe up there, but can he ever be safe from you?" And this one, I really like the fact that it explores the kind of power of a mother's love with the sort of unreliable narrator type of trope. And it does have multiple narratives in it, but it's got like a chunk of one narrative, and then it flicks back and forth in time with that chunk, and then we get to see a different voice for another chunk of the book, and then we go back to the original voice. And so it's got a really interesting structure to it, and I think that's one of the reasons that I couldn't put it down. If you are somebody who is scared of heights, the kind of thrill part of this one is not necessarily the actual height, and so if you're worried about picking this one up because you are scared of heights, then do not worry about that one. The Heights is the name of a building, and we know that Louise Candlish likes to base her books around a particular building. She has lots of books based around kind of like property, psychological thriller, property drama, including The Other Passenger, which takes place on one of the sort of Thames ferries, which is very much based around, again, property. And so The Heights kind of follows this theme, but it's definitely a contender for one of my favorite books of the year. Definitely. Like, when I thought about what books I was going to put on this list, this one was at the forefront. And one of the next ones I was going to talk about, I read immediately after it. I had like a really good reading stretch of reading this one, but very, very different from yours.
Yeah.
I'm probably quite different from the next one that you're going to talk about.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
I will bring that one up. Are you ready?
Yes. Yes.
There we go.
Okay, so now we're talking about The Wedding Pact. And this is by Isla Gordon. And this is actually, Isla Gordon is a pen name for Lisa Dickinson. Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
Yes. So this is her second book under the name Isla Gordon. And I read the first one as well, and I really, really have enjoyed both of them. The Wedding Pact is, it's a really, really funny story, which I've very, very much enjoyed. It's set in Bath, as you can see from the cover, maybe. And it's just such a funny situation in that we start seeing a young girl who's just obsessed with this particular house in Bath, which is set at the top of a hill, and it has open ground in front of it and a beautiful view down the hill to the actual city. And she goes along and she visits this house often from the outside, not the inside. And it's always been her dream to live there. And lo and behold, a flat comes up for rent in the house. It's been chopped up into flats. And so it comes to being the day when people can go along and put in their bid to try and live in this flat. And so she goes along and discovers that, in fact, the landlady will only let to a married couple. Lo and behold, she has actually bumped into a man while she was having a coffee that day, and she met him when she spilt coffee all down the front of him, unfortunately. And but
that sounds like Notting Hill.
Bit.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very reminiscent, actually. Anyway, he's there also viewing. So she quickly comes up with a scheme and suggests to him that perhaps they could pretend to be a married couple.
Oh.
And they actually managed to get the flat. But then, of course, comes the difficult part where they have to try and keep up the persona of a married couple when they are not even hardly known to each other, and so that they can keep hold of the flat. And so it's quite amusing, some of the things that happen when they're trying to keep up this pretense, as you can probably imagine. And there are good times and there are bad times. And of course, as you might hope, there's coming together of a bit of romance in the air. So another one that I really enjoyed, and I had a chuckle or two at that one. So
I can imagine, having met Lisa Dickinson and spoken to her, she is very funny in person. And so I can fully imagine that scenario playing out really well in one of her novels.
Yeah.
You were really making me want to read it there.
It also made me quite keen to go and visit Bath again.
And I just read something recently that made me want to go and visit Bath.
Oh.
Clearly, we should have spoken about this before and planned a trip to Bath. We could have been live from Bath.
Oh, we could.
Yeah.
Maybe Q4 we will be live from Bath.
Oh,
who can tell?
That's exciting. Just circling back very briefly. I've lost my cursor. There it is. Circling back very briefly to The Heights. I said that I knew that Debbie was watching, had read The Heights as well. And she said, love this book, keeps you gripped throughout. I would fully agree with that. And we've got another person agreeing with that too. I wonder, Debbie, is it going to be on one of your top books of the year or not? I won't be offended since I recommended it to you if you say no. So I am going to switch to something more warm-hearted now. We're not going to stray too far from the lovely romance in Bath, but I'm going to talk about The Library by Bella Osborne. Just looking at the cover of this one, you kind of know that it would be a book that I would definitely enjoy because it's got a stack of books there. It's got some glasses, and I love the fact that it's got some earbuds there, which I thought implied audiobook. They don't necessarily imply audiobook, but I love the fact that we've got an image of the library and then we've got earbuds like we both borrow audiobooks from the library. I just like that representation there. So, and the US cover of this one is very, very similar, just with slightly more sort of muted, almost like more traditional looking books. And so I like the fact that the cover's been kept the same across the two. I don't know why that should be a big deal to me, but I like both covers. And I think this is the cover of the ebook, and the paperback hasn't been released yet. So I'm not sure what the cover of the paperback is going to look like, whether it's going to be the same as this one or not. And I think this one, the audiobook is already out. So it's ebook and audiobook are out, but the paperback isn't out yet. This one came out in the UK on the 1st of September, and it is a favourite term that I talked about in book group. It's cross-generational uplit. And this, I believe that Bella Osborne actually mentioned this briefly when she was a guest on this channel. I will, after the fact, once this video is all uploaded, try and link that video at this point, because I believe she did mention some cross-generational uplit. So this involves two very different people. We have a teenage boy and a female library patron who is sort of getting on in years, but they both have their own sort of personal things going on. They cross paths at the library, and it is basically beneficial for both of them to have crossed paths. You might think that it would benefit one side more than the other side, but it is very, very much mutually beneficial. So we have some great exchanges between these two, and we get to find out some amazing things about them both through them actually kind of revealing them to each other. So they meet at the library because he is there to kind of find some romance novels, interestingly. I won't tell you why, but if you are a fan of reading romance novels, there are some great titles and authors dropped throughout this book. And he then kind of branches into some other reading as well. And so if you are a fan of reading in general, which if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you are, you will enjoy the mention of lots of different authors and books throughout this book. A book that talks about books and a book that talks about reading is always a fun thing. But yeah, Maggie has a lot more going on than meets the eye. He has a lot more going on than meets the eye. And, you know, it delves into some sort of issues-based things to do with sort of mental health. And it also talks about the sort of implications of being lonely and how you don't have to be alone to be lonely. And I think that that's something that is great sort of fodder for reading about, but also something that, you know, is not maybe talked about enough, or wasn't talked about enough until we had the times when we were sort of home on our own, when we wouldn't have normally been recently. I don't know. I can't think why that might be. We're not mentioning that. But yeah, I enjoyed this so much. And it's one of those that is a very rare book for me, that I only read a small chunk at a time each time and kind of spread it out over a long time, because I just felt once I started reading that was the way this book should be read. I didn't feel like I wanted to binge it and kind of read it all in one sitting. And so I basically never read more than like 20% at a time. More often it was like 10%, but it was quite easy to do because Tom's chapters were in first person and Maggie's chapters were in third person. And so when you kind of finished a chapter, you did feel like you could put it down and come back to it. And yeah, I'm really interested to, I'm still sort of thinking about the characters and what they might be doing now. You know, when a book sticks with you to that extent. Yeah. But it was very lovely. And Bella Osborne normally writes in the kind of like, it's definitely romance category, whereas this one was very much more, it's been sort of marketed as a book club book, and it's cross-generational uplifts. So think Beth O'Leary in The Switch, and I can't think of another one right now, but it's very much more in that like Beth O'Leary genre rather than Bella Osborne's traditional writing, and that's why it was with a different publisher.
All right.
So that was an interesting one. So Bella Osborne seems to have had like a million different books out this year, but this one was with a different publisher, and so that's probably why it got released when it did. But yeah, I think that one would be great on audio, just because it's got the two different perspectives, and the fact that one of them is in the first person and one of them is in the third person. I thought that was a really good choice. I really enjoyed the separation of the two.
Yeah. Clever.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that one, and I'm glad I made it last.
Yeah.
Are you ready to jump into your next book?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, so this is Jo Thomas, one of my go-to authors. And her latest one was Celebrations at the Chateau. So as you can see from the cover here, we've got a really nice looking French chateau. And this is the story of three sisters who have inherited this chateau from their grandfather. And they turn up at the gates not knowing what to expect and find this very grand house that they had no idea their grandfather had any connection with. So as well as anything else, this is a bit of a mystery story, because gradually it unfolds as to what is the connection between Grandad and the house and the inhabitants of the house. So the three girls think, well, we can't all stay here and look at this chateau. One of us will stay behind and put the place on the market, and we'll get rid of it and have some money. But as the one who stays behind finds out very quickly, the laws in France are a bit more complicated than they had expected. And there is, in fact, a sitting tenant in the chateau who is actually a member of the family who owned the chateau before the girls owned it. And what's more, believe it or not, they have to pay the sitting tenant a salary each month. And they also have to pay tax to the town for actually having the chateau. So they really are not in a position to sell it, and they're not in a position to do anything because they need some money to pay these things, or else the chateau will be taken away from them and given back to the people that owned it before. Very strange sort of law to us in this country, but that's how it works there. So then we see the girl who's left behind trying to decide what she can do. The chateau, of course, is a bit run down, so it needs all sorts of things doing. There's all sorts of incidents of blowing up boilers and floods and all kind of things happening. She eventually decides that perhaps she could run it as a bed and breakfast, or the French equivalent. But she finds that she's got to get the permission of the mayor of the town, who happens to live next door. And he's not very amenable to this. And so it goes on. There's all sorts of fights between the two of them, disagreements, trying to get the locals on side. And in the end, just by sheer chance, she ends up finding out that she could actually use the chateau to have celebrations, as the title suggests. So it becomes more of a place to go and have weddings, etc. But as a side business, they find that in fact there is an orchard attached in the grounds, and the apples there are particularly good for making cider. And historically, it's been a thing that the whole village has joined in. And when she realizes that she can get them all on side doing that, well, who knows where it can go? And of course, we've got to have a bit of romance, haven't we? So here's the mayor living next door.
Oh,
could it be that they'll get over their differences? You have to read it and see.
Oh, that one sounds like a Netflix adaptation waiting to happen.
Well, that
like
would
a
be
limited
good.
series, maybe.
Yeah,
especially with the thought of the mayor living next door.
Oh yeah.
Just, mind you, I don't know that the mayor of somewhere quite often conjures up a sort of perhaps like a sort of older married figure. But then I suppose, the mayor of Schitt's Creek is not like that in that show. So
no,
yeah,
no, the mayor is quite a young chap. So it's quite possible, that there could be a little bit of romance.
Yeah. Sounds like a little bit of armchair traveling there as well.
Yes, as usual with Jo Thomas.
Yes,
nice trip to France. A little bit of nice food being mentioned. Nice cider, obviously.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's flick over to something completely different again. This is Fresh by Margot Wood. And this one I was really excited about because Margot Wood used to host the sort of YouTube channel for Epic Reads on here, and so I was introduced to her by watching that and her book Shimmy, and then when I found out that she was writing fiction, I was excited to read it. And then when she was sort of talking about it and saying, it's going to be a little bit gay and a little bit on the controversial side, perhaps, I was even more excited to read it. So this is called Fresh because, as you can see from the red solo cup on the cover, this is about a college freshman. And it sort of talks about, I've talked a lot about books like this, that there sort of weren't enough of them around. I'm glad that there are a lot more coming about. You kind of had high school books, and then you had books about people who were into adulthood and working, and the sort of the university years were missed out a little bit. And so I love the fact that we've got more of these books about like the end of high school, the beginning of college, university. And so this one just talks about identity in all its forms. And if you have gone to university yourself, you'll kind of identify with this character of her sort of trying to be someone during that first semester of university, and then kind of like coming to a point at Christmas break and realizing that that's not necessarily who she wants to be, but what can she do about it now? And I think a lot of people have a very different experience in that first term to then the next, semester or 2 terms, whatever it is. at university, just because it's a real learning curve, and it's a massively steep learning curve for a lot of people. They're living away from home, or they're living on their own, or they're living with a roommate for the first time ever. And I just feel like there's not been enough written about it. But if you've ever seen any of the booktube videos that Margot Wood has done, you will know that she is also hilarious. And so there were some moments that just made me completely laugh out loud in this one. And there were some moments where I was sort of close to tears as well. I feel like I went on the emotional roller coaster with this character. And I know that this is something that I would have loved to have read, you know, in the run up to or during my first year of university, because it would have been like, oh, so it's not just me then. And it's just, yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was better than I expected, and that makes it sound like I had low expectations, but I didn't factor in so much kind of humor and heart combined. I thought maybe it would be one or the other, but it was funny, and it was emotional, and it was just kind of true to life as well. And I haven't seen enough people talking about this one on booktube or on bookstagram, and I haven't seen it in the shops here. I don't even know if it's released in the UK. I'm kind of gutted that I wasn't in the US for when it was released, because I would have been trying to go and find it in a bookstore. But yeah, highly recommend that one. And I do have a full review of it on my blog, of course, and I did talk about it in my July, I want to say, wrap up, or is it one of the 4 books that I read in August? I think it was a July book, but I read it immediately after reading The Heights, I think, and I read it in 2 sittings, so that gives you an idea of just how quick of a read it is, as well as how entertaining of a read it is. I really enjoyed it. And it's, you know, it's not YA, because it's slightly older than YA, but it's not, I wouldn't go into calling it new adult, because that's got connotations of being sexy, and it's there are some sexy parts, but it's not the be all and end all of the book. So it's like older YA, or like actual young adult, because she's gone off to university. So yeah, something a bit different again.
Yeah.
Are you ready to take the reins again?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, so we have the Seaside Cocktail Campervan. I kept seeing this book being advertised all over the place whenever I looked anywhere. And eventually I had the opportunity to read it. And I was glad I did, because I wasn't quite sure what it was going to turn out to be like. But in fact, it was a really entertaining book, full of fun and interesting characters. And the very concept sort of really piqued my interest, if you like, because I've never come across anything like this cocktail campervan. Maybe they're 10 a dozen, 10 a penny. 10 a penny. But I didn't know if they are. Anyway, it's this is the story of Jack and Lucy. Now, Jack is the guy with the cocktail campervan, and he has converted his red VW campervan into a mobile cocktail bar, which he takes to events and festivals, that kind of thing. And he meets up at one event, I think it was an anniversary, with Lucy, who has something interesting also, in that she is making and selling pizzas from a horse box. So the two of them turn up at quite a few of these events and get to know each other. And there are some interesting and entertaining things that go on. And each chapter is started with supposedly an invitation to whatever event it is. So you know exactly what you're going to be reading about this time and where the two of them are going to turn up. And of course, as in all these things that I read, there seems to be the promise of a bit of romance.
Oh.
Because, of course, they start off at loggerheads. Lucy has the most adorable little dog who happens to be a Dachshund.
Oh, a little sausage dog.
Yeah, who unfortunately decides that she's going to destroy Jack's sign, this chalkboard that he has out telling people what cocktail of the day is. And she destroys this in a strange manner that we won't talk about right now. And that sort of sets them off as at loggerheads. But eventually, he's been in the business a bit longer than Lucy has, so he begins to give her a few tips on how she can make the most of her horsebox pizza business. And they travel around seaside locations. So as I say, it's a fun read, light-hearted, a quick read, and one that I very much enjoyed.
And we then ended up seeing horsebox pizza places and cocktail camper vans after you finished reading it. Yeah,
everywhere.
Like they were just everywhere after that. And sausage dogs.
Oh, sausage dogs are everywhere nowadays.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like you were talking about it in the context of the book, and then it was just like, oh, there's another horsebox pizza place.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they weren't that original after all, but still, I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to very briefly talk about my next book because I do have an entire video dedicated to this one on the channel. Because this is The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell, and this is the UK cover, and it's very, very simple. Normally I feel like there's a little more detail on a Lisa Jewell cover, but the US one and the UK one have both just got the sort of dark blue background and then the title on it. So I had to check and see which cover it was because I thought it might be a little more complex. But yes, this is basically Lisa Jewell's latest thriller. You can't say a lot about a Lisa Jewell thriller because you risk giving spoilers, but The Night She Disappeared is what you need to know about it. And I do have a full video reviewing it and talking about it whilst on a plane between Denver and Heathrow, and the planes in between Denver and Heathrow, and I sort of give a full review in that video, and so I'm really not going to say an awful lot about it, but it is definitely one of my top 10 books of Q3. I believe it came out the day I was flying, and so that's why I decided to do the video the way I did it. But yeah, I always love a Lisa Jewell thriller, and they generally end up on my top 10 books of the year. And I do have a whole Lisa Jewell playlist because I have reviewed most of her most recent releases on the channel as well. So if you're interested in a little bit more about Lisa Jewell, you've come to the right place, because I have been reading Lisa Jewell since Ralph's Party, and I have seen her in multiple locations transatlantically, and so yeah, there are lots of Lisa Jewell videos on this channel, and so it's one of my favorite books of Q3. It's an adult thriller. It's very good. I did some gasping, and yeah, I have a full video talking about it. And yes, Debbie agrees that Lisa Jewell is one of her favorite authors too. It's just, I don't know how she does it. Whenever I read one of her books, I'm like, how did she twist this, and how did we add that into the story, and like what's gonna happen now? But yes, highly recommend it. I actually ended up doing it partly on audiobook. I had an ebook review copy, and then ended up, because I read it on release day, I bought the audiobook, so I did it half and half. So if you were thinking of borrowing the audiobook from the library, for example, it was good on audio as well. It was slightly, did I say it was easier or harder to keep track of who was who? I can't remember now. But yeah, it was because there are multiple people to keep track of, but I did do the audio, and you can see my sort of real-time reaction in that video as well. But yeah, Lisa Jewell, the whole playlist. I'll leave it linked in the description box. After the fact, I will leave it linked up above as well. But yes, the day she disappeared, the night she disappeared. I kept saying the day she disappeared. I read 3 books with the word disappear or disappearing in at once, like back to back. So I was getting very confused about which title was which. But yeah, it came out in the UK end of July. It came out in the US beginning of October. So it's out wherever you are. But yeah, something again, sort of flicking over to something completely different. And then probably flicking back to something completely different again.
Yeah, exactly. This is the House Beneath the Cliffs. Katrina was speaking earlier on about a book that stayed with her.
Yes, I was talking about The Characters from the Library by Bella Osborne.
Yeah, this whole story has stayed with me since I read it. It just, I don't know, it just piqued my imagination, this story. I think maybe because I'm kind of familiar with the general area where it's set. So the story itself is set in a tiny village on the coast on the Moray Firth of Scotland. Yeah. And it is actually it is a village. It does exist, this village. It's not fictional, but that's probably where the similarity ends. I don't think anything else in it is other than fictional, but the village is there. And it tells a story of a lady who's quite a successful chef. And she's been in a relationship with an even more successful chef. And they've broken up, and she's just decided she's going to leave and go anywhere. So she's one of these people that buys a property on the internet that she's never seen. And she ends up in this very strange dwelling in this little village that we're talking about. And the village is actually really, really picturesque, but a bit like the village I was talking about earlier in that earlier book, a bit run down. Yeah. It has been a fishing village, but apart from the fact it still has a pier, there's not really much fishing going on there now. So it's nice. There's a community spirit, apart from this one guy there who really doesn't like this incomer. But apart from that, it sounds gorgeous. The only problem is we've got these cliffs that I mentioned in the title, and in fact they're looming above the houses, and every now and again there's a landslip, and in fact some of the houses have been damaged by the landslipping. And I can just imagine, looking up and seeing this, and people are just waiting for the day that there's going to be more damage.
Oh no.
Yeah, so
that sounds tense.
It's quite dramatic. Yes, exactly. It is tense. But there's a lot going on in the actual story. We're not just sort of sitting there looking up at the cliff waiting for it to come down. And whether it does or not, you'll have to read the book to find out. But it is a really nice story with some nice characters, interesting characters with their own backstories, which I very much enjoy in a book. And this drama of, what's going to happen. And one of the side stories really interests me because it's all about a pod of dolphins. Oh, and there are people may realise that there are a lot of dolphins in the Moray Firth in Scotland. So this pod of dolphins is being followed by one of the locals and his son. And that's a nice, as I say, a side story. So it's something that I've really enjoyed. It's a bit different from the other books that I've talked about today, but definitely worth a look.
Yeah, it's interesting because that is a debut. Yeah, and my Fresh by Margot Wood was a debut. So I think it's obviously a sign that there have been some really strong debuts this year. The fact that we've both picked a debut for this list for Q3, I think that's a great sign. I also have noticed that quite a few of the books that we've talked about have featured sort of a property in some way. A lot of yours have featured some sort of property.
Yes, that's true.
And then my The Heights Louise Candlish specifically talked about a property. And then there is a key dwelling in The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell that's like key to the story. So that's obviously been a theme with releases this year as well. So yeah, I think that's sort of, as you were talking about it being another house, and you know, the chateau and the one in Bath as well. They all were to do with property. So that's an interesting thing.
In my other one.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Oh, there you go. That's the little nugget for, mind you, by the time you write it, it won't be on trend anymore, you know. It's the trend for 2021, clearly. The trend for 2021, not Q3.
Not so many dogs in my books either.
No, just the one sausage dog.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, I am flicking back to now this one is, again, it's one of those that is not YA, but this author is known for YA. It is technically adult, but it's definitely younger, on the younger end of adult. It's not about somebody my age. So this is If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. Julie Murphy, of course, is the author of Dumpling, which was adapted for Netflix. So that'll be the one that you are familiar with. And Dumpling was followed by Pudding, which was followed by Pumpkin, which came out this year as well, which was also fabulous. But If the Shoe Fits is a Disney-endorsed Cinderella retelling that mashes up the Cinderella story. So you can see that the cover is very much that Disney version of Cinderella, but plus size. And it mashes up Cinderella and the sort of Bachelor franchise of shows. So we have girls going into a mansion, a TV set, to possibly date this guy, and our main character somehow ends up being one of those girls, and there's all the complications that come about of the fact that just she may have a little bit too many links with some of the things that go on with the show. Again, it's hard not to give spoilers, but she's sort of grown up in and around the TV industry, and so she may know some people involved with the show. You know, she may know some people on the show, and so that's an interesting one. And then we have the added complication that, you know, when you're watching these type of dating shows, reality TV type of things, that the people are always very conventionally attractive, and you don't get a lot of fat characters on these shows. And so we have that added to the dimension of the book. I did listen to this one on audiobook, and I think that the audio narration did a very good job. I listened in sort of one big chunk, and I really enjoyed, obviously, the fat representation in it, always here for that, but I also really enjoyed the reality TV aspect of it, because I am a reality TV fan, and I've seen other books try to kind of replicate this in novel form and haven't done so terribly well. There's one that I did as a buddy read with Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany a little while ago, where we sort of had that a little bit, and it wasn't done quite as well as this. And so I knew that it was sort of a safe concept in Julie Murphy's hands, and I was really quite impressed. And it has been marketed as her sort of first adult book, but I would say it's definitely on the younger scale of adult books, and so yeah, something a bit different again. I'm not sure when or if it came out in the UK. It was one of these that was definitely out in the US. I feel like I should have looked at this, but yeah, having spent the first month of Q3 living in the US and then the next 2 months of Q3 living in the UK, I think we can be excused there. think we can be excused on that one. But yes, so we've had our 5 each. We've had our top 10 in no particular order. But we did read something together that we really enjoyed, and it's not a Q3 release, but we wanted to talk about it nevertheless because it's one of the favorite things that we read during Q3. So yeah, it would have been a Q2 2011 release, unless it came out in July. It might have been a Q3 2011 release, so it's 10 years old anyway. And we read this one partly because it's one of the few books by this author that I had not reread. I've reread most of this author's other books, and it got re-released with a new cover. I was then able to come to the UK, and it's one of the first books that I bought. And so we listened to this one on audiobook together. And if you're familiar with the channel, you will be familiar with the fact that I have reread this author's book several times and pushed them on you to read several times. And this is The Single Girl's To-Do List by Lindsay Kelk. And this is the new released cover that just came out this year. And I talked about in my channel the fact that this has a new 80-page bride-to-be story that is one of the reasons that I bought the new. I cannot keep it still. It floats to one side. One of the reasons that I bought the new edition, and then I haven't gone ahead and read the new story yet, and I need to do that. But yeah, Rachel Summers loves the to-do list. Boyfriend, tick. Flat, tick. Great job, tick. Not on the list, being dumped. And then what kept coming up? That he also took with him when he dumped her.
Oh,
he took the toothpaste.
Toothpaste.
And it just kept circling back to the fact that he'd taken the toothpaste.
That was so funny.
It was just so funny. we were sort of almost waiting for her to say again, and he took the toothpaste, and I've got no toothpaste. But there is a cameo from another fabulous Lindsay Kelk character in this book. And we were just, I think when we listened to it together and that character came up, we were just fangirling over the fact that she was there. We were like, we know her. It was like, oh, it's our friend.
I was so surprised.
Yeah.
Is it?
I know. And when this one first came out, was she 3 books into it or 2? I think definitely New York and Hollywood had come out, but I'm not sure if Paris had come out yet. And so when I read it the first time, I was like, oh, I'm familiar with this character. I've met her in some books, but now I'm like, I love this character. And so it was really nice to see her. I can't get the holding it still with it in the right angle. But yes, determined to move on, Rachel has to make a new list, the Single Girl's To-Do List, with the help of her best friends, who are fabulous as well. It will take her on all kinds of new adventures, and soon it won't be a case of what, but who she decides to tick off. And it was just classic Lindsay Kelk, funny, great story. And I think it stood the test of time as well. And so that's why it gets an honorable mention. I think that even though, she talks about some sort of popular brands and artists of that time, because it came out in 2011, it still stands today, and I could still sort of get behind the character. And I need to read the 80-page bride-to-be story, because I just need to read it.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember what it's called. I did look this up. It is called The Bride-to-Be's To-Do List. There you go. And it's only 80 pages, so we really should read it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it gets an honourable mention.
Yeah, well, I had never read it before.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And yeah, I was, when you said, what was it they kept mentioning, I'm like, couldn't remember who, toothpaste. Toothpaste makes more sense, obviously.
You took the toothpaste.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
No toothpaste. Dreadful.
No, terrible.
Heinous crime.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like it must have been a fun book to write, because it's like, right, what else can we put her through? What else can we make her attempt to do from her to-do list? What other wild ride things should we put on this to-do list? And it does make a good audiobook as well. And I believe that Lindsay Kelk said that we should read or reread The Single Girl's To-Do List before reading her latest one, which comes out on the 11th of November on a night like this. and there's a tour, and we're going, and so that's
Yeah.
exciting. So make sure you are subscribed if you are not already, because we will obviously bring you some vlog footage of that tour. We are currently committed to 2 dates.
Yep.
In different parts of the country, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, make sure, because there will be some vlog footage, so if you want to see some Lindsay Kelk footage on the channel, make sure you're subscribed. And in the description box or the end screen, I also have a Lindsay Kelk playlist, which I will leave linked for you if you are a Lindsay Kelk fan as well. Lisa Jewell playlist, Lindsay Kelk playlist, why not? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So as always, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, please do, if you are watching this after the fact, or you have just stuck around to this part of the video, let us know what your favorite read or reads of Q3 has been. And also, is there anything that you're excited about for Q4? Let us know that in the comments as well. I know,
that's exciting enough.
Christmas books. I know.
Yay.
I'm already thinking about non-fiction November. And October's been like a pretty good reading month for releases. Obviously, we just had Super Thursday, and you and I are about to start listening to the new Millie Johnson as well.
Yeah.
We have a road trip coming up, and so it's getting put on, and hopefully we'll be able to report back on that one, maybe in our top 10 books of Q4.
Oh, I'm sure.
Maybe.
I'm
sure.
Yeah.
Do we get that one as a freebie if it's on both of our lists?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, watch this space. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much to everybody who's watched live. Thank you so much if you have watched after the fact and you've made it to this point. And thank you so much to Linda for agreeing to come on again.
Thank you for having me.
You literally sat right next to me now. You don't have to be sat on a different computer screen. That's so exciting.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Yeah.
Next time.
Yeah. I might be too. Who knows? So yes, I don't think I have anything else to add to that apart from all the thank yous. And yeah, we will see you in approximately 3 months time, ready for top 10 books of Q4. Very exciting. I wonder if we should make it part of Vlogmas. I think so.
That would be good.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for watching. Thank you also for watching. It's exciting to having had you join us live. We're very excited and honoured that you took time out of your evening to be here with us. And yeah, I will be back with a movie review for you on Sunday. So I will see you then. Thanks for watching.
Bye.